BIOS versus UEFI. Here is your same structured beginner-friendly content for BIOS versus UEFI, intermediate level, system boot, and firmware. Introduction. When you turn on a computer, the operating system does not start immediately. First, a special low-level software called firmware initializes the hardware and prepares the system. There are two main types of firmware: BIOS, Basic Input-Output System; older system, UEFI, Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, modern replacement. At the intermediate level, understanding BIOS versus UEFI means learning how a computer boots, how hardware is initialized, how firmware interacts with the OS, differences between legacy and modern systems. This topic is essential for understanding system startup, OS loading, and hardware configuration. What is BIOS? BIOS is the traditional firmware used to initialize hardware during startup. In simple terms, BIOS equals basic system software that starts the computer. Example concept. Power on means BIOS, means hardware check, means OS loads functions of BIOS. BIOS performs several tasks. Initializes hardware components, performs post, power on self-test, detects storage devices, loads bootloader from disk, transfers control to operating system. UEFI is the modern replacement for BIOS with more advanced features. In simple terms, UEFI equals advanced firmware with better speed, flexibility, and features. Example concept. Power on means UEFI, means faster initialization, means OS loads functions of UEFI. UEFI performs similar tasks as BIOS, but with improvements. Faster boot process, graphical interface support, secure boot support for large drives, better hardware management. Boot process, BIOS versus UEFI. Power on means firmware, BIOS UEFI, means bootloader, means operating system. Power on means firmware, BIOS UEFI, means bootloader, means operating system. BIOS boot process. Power on BIOS runs post, searches for boot device, loads bootloader MBR. OS starts UEFI boot process. Power on UEFI initializes hardware, reads EFI system partition, loads boot manager, OS starts. Key differences between BIOS and UEFI. Feature, BIOS UEFI. Type legacy firmware, modern firmware. Text-based graphical UI boot speed, slower, faster. Disk support, up to 2 terabytes, supports very large disks. Boot method, MBR, GPT. Security, basic secure boot. Extensibility, limited, highly extensible. MBR versus GPT, important difference. MBR, master boot record, used by BIOS, supports limited partitions. Max 2 terabyte disk size. GPT, GUID partition table, supports larger disks and more partitions. Partition table, used by UEFI, supports large disks, more partitions, more reliable. Example concept. BIOS means MBR, UEFI means GPT, secure boot. UEFI includes secure boot to improve security. Example concept. Only trusted OS means allowed to boot. This prevents malware, unauthorized OS loading, user interface differences, BIOS keyboard-only navigation, simple text menu. UEFI, mouse plus keyboard support, graphical interface, easier configuration. UEFI improves performance by faster hardware initialization, parallel processing during boot, optimized boot loading. Example concept. UEFI means faster startup compared to BIOS compatibility mode, legacy mode. UEFI systems can emulate BIOS using legacy mode, CSM. Example concept. UEFI means can act like BIOS for older systems. Real-world example. Turning on a computer. Power on. Dash. UEFI initializes hardware. Checks boot device. Loads OS. System ready. Advantages of BIOS. Simple, widely supported in older systems. Limitations of BIOS. Slower boot. Limited disk support. Outdated architecture. No modern security features. Advantages of UEFI. Faster boot. Better security. Support for Large drives, user-friendly interface, flexible and extensible. Limitations of UEFI, more complex compatibility issues with older systems. Concepts learned. What BIOS is, what UEFI is, how boot process works. NVR versus GPT. Secure boot explained. Firmware role in system startup. Simple definition. BIOS versus UEFI. Two types of firmware that initialize hardware and start the operating system, where BIOS is the legacy system and UEFI is the modern advanced replacement. Final summary. BIOS and UEFI are firmware systems that control how a computer starts. BIOS is the older system with limited features, while UEFI is a modern replacement offering faster boot times, better security, and support for larger storage devices. UEFI has become the standard in modern computers due to its flexibility and improved performance. Understanding BIOS and UEFI is essential for learning system startup, operating systems, and hardware configuration.